On a night that we expected to be all about the returns of Mitch Haniger and Austin Slater finally to the lineup, Alex Cobb stole the show. He pitched a complete game shutout, which is just so rare in today's day and age. So that was great. The return of those other two players were great, but also the Giants had a significant injury. So we'll get into all of it next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever it is that you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already. And if you're watching on YouTube, smash that subscribe button. So easy to do. It's right there. It's in red. Just hit the button. Thank you very much. Anyway, coming up on today's show, like I said, under normal circumstances, the lead on this show was going to be the return of Mitch Haniger, and the debut for the Giants for Mitch Haniger and Austin Slater's return. And that is a story, but ultimately Alex Cobb stole the show. He pitched a complete game shutout, and those are just so rare in today's day and age, and it was just extremely impressive. Alex Cobb lowered his earned run average on the season to 1.91. The fielding independent pitching, hey, guess what? It's almost exactly the same as it was last year at 2.80. So it's funny, like the stable number is the peripheral, right? 2.80 FIP last year, right now 2.83 FIP. And what we're seeing is a fluctuation in the ERA. ERA last year was 3.73, and right now it's 1.91. And so I could go on and on about why that is and why I trust the peripheral numbers more, and why the lower FIP last year tells me that the ERA from last year is or should come down closer to where that FIP is. Anyway, so far, so good. We're seeing that. And so I just can't emphasize enough how impressive it is to see a complete game shutout. And the Cardinals, I know they've had their problems this season, and their record is now half a game worse than the Giants. So this season, a lot of weird things are going on. The Pittsburgh Pirates, of all teams, have the best record in the National League. And so if you want to know how early it is in the season and that it is not yet time to read into results, just look no further than the Pirates having the best record in the National League. But teams like the Cardinals, the Phillies, the Astros, the Mariners, I would throw the Giants into that mix, have had slow starts. But anyway, the Cardinals are a good offensive team, I would say. Got some really good players up and down the lineup, and Alex Cobb just completely shut them down. And he did it with just an insane number of ground balls. It's not like he was striking everybody out last night, although the stuff was really good. He was pumping in mid-90s sinkers with good command and good movement. He was just on his game, and I should have this pulled up, but I don't. But what I saw was like he basically induced, I think it was like 17 ground ball outs, which was among the most in Major League history. So many balls on the ground, and they were converted to outs. And that has been a big part of the season for the Giants so far, which is that while they have not been perfect, the defense has not been a consistent issue that has cost them games. It has, honestly, their pitchers have been some of their worst defenders, and Alex Cobb nearly did it again on a comebacker, just like we saw in his first start of the year in Yankee Stadium. Comebacker, runner on first, throws to second to try to start a double play, and he threw it into center field. Last night, same thing. Comebacker, runner on first, throws to second. It's high, it's wide, but David Villar makes an athletic play to reach up and to his left, grab the ball, and then have the presence of mind to then tag the runner and throw to first to complete the double play. So a game of inches. If that ball sails into center field like we saw in Yankee Stadium, maybe the whole result of this game ends up being different, because this was a 0-0 game for the longest time. And so that could have certainly given the Cardinals some, it would have moved guys along, certainly could have brought in some runs. But anyway, my point was that if you want to gripe about the Giants defense, ironically, it's Brandon Crawford and the pitchers. So that is not really what we mean when we say, oh, there's concerns about the Giants defense. Nobody was talking about, oh, there's concerns that their pitchers are going to be poor defensively. That's just kind of a fluky thing, and it's just been weird. Ross Stripling the other day kind of juggling a ball that he should have made. It's happened a lot with their pitchers, but I digress. The defense, J.D. Davis has been just excellent. Like, I can't believe how good J.D. Davis has been defensively. And so the Giants are a ground ball team. I just tweeted this out this morning. Here are the top 5 ground ball pitchers among qualified National League pitchers. And by ground ball pitchers, I mean when a ball is put in play, when contact is made and it's in fair territory, how often is it on the ground? Number 1 in Major League Baseball, largely influenced by last night, like I said, with like a record number of ground ball outs, Alex Cobb, 62.5% of balls hit into fair territory are on the ground. Number 2 in the National League among qualified starters, Logan Webb, 60%. Number 3 is Marcus Stroman of the Cubs. Number 4 is Justin Steele, also of the Cubs. And number 5, Tony DeSclafani at 55.9%. So the Giants have 3 of the top 5 National League qualified starting pitchers in ground ball rate. And ground balls are good because at worst, look, you sometimes get, if you hit it right down the lines, you can get a double out of it. But at worst, it's a single. You're just not giving up damage on ground balls. And at best, you can get double plays. It means fewer home runs, typically, although that's what's been somewhat weird about the start of this season, is that the Giants have had a home run problem, which I maintain is unsustainable. They literally were the best in the league, not only in 2021. You can say, oh, everything went right. That doesn't count. Also in 2022, fewest home runs allowed in Major League Baseball, 2 years in a row there. And so this year, suddenly allowing a ton of homers with largely the same pitchers. Yes, Ross Stripling is new, and he's given up a lot of them. Okay. But I think when all is said and done, the ground ball tendencies and the fact that the Giants are playing better defense is just very much a good thing, and it was on display last night. Like, that's the formula. Keep the ball on the ground and make the plays, and you're going to pitch a complete game shutout, basically. And so, anyway, coming up in just a minute, we are going to turn the page and talk about a few more things here, including an injury. The Giants, while they got a couple players back, they also lost someone who's really important at a really, really critical position. So we will get into who it was, what happened, and what the ramifications will be in just a minute. But before we do, this show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Therapy. It's not always an easy subject to talk about, but I can tell you from personal experience. I'm going to be totally candid with you. I had a serious trauma medically that happened to me, and I needed help. And to be able to touch base with a therapist was absolutely necessary. And maybe you're not going through something quite so extreme yourself, but whatever it is, in today's day and age, I think that every one of us can benefit from having someone on our side with whom we can talk about what's going on. And so for that reason, I think it is very much worth giving BetterHelp a shot. If you're thinking of starting therapy, if it's even in your mind whatsoever, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonmlb today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonmlb. All right, as promised, we are going to discuss injury news. We've got guys coming back and we've got guys going down. I said before the game, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because Darren Ruff went on the injured list and got a lot of pushback about the relevance of Darren Ruff. So we'll get into that, but also Haniger and Slater returning, and then we'll save that conversation actually and first talk about the injury that was sustained last night. By the way, the Giants play the Cardinals at what time tonight? 6. I think the game's at 6:45 tonight, and they're going to be facing a right-handed pitcher. They're going to be using an opener, the Giants are, and it's probably going to be followed by John Brebbia. So a lot to look out for tonight. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. Yeah, coming up tomorrow, we'll be breaking that one down, and the everydayers will hear us discuss, can the Giants win their 4th game in a row and start to take off now that they're getting healthy? Although, as I'm about to tell you, they're getting healthy, but then they lose somebody important. And who they lose, we don't know the severity, to be clear. It's Joey Bart. And this is ironic because those of you who listen to me regularly, even if you don't, you've probably still heard me say it. I've been a Joey Bart skeptic for a long time. I'm also fair, I think. I think the criticism has been fair. A lot of people complain about the Giants' team strikeout rate this year, which is around 27 point something percent right now. Well, Joey Bart's career strikeout rate is 37%. Last year it was 38.5%. He went through long stretches 2 different times where he was where he had a rolling kind of 15-game average of a strikeout rate of around 45%. Literally almost half the time for long stretches, he would go to the plate and strike out. And so is it fair to criticize that? I think so. And if you tell me it's not, I think you're crazy. I'm sorry. Crazy may be a strong word, but I think it's fair to criticize. However, Joey Bart has looked so much better in his 12 games this season. It's a small sample. I'm not simply basing this on numbers. In fact, I'm almost ignoring the numbers. What I am seeing is a guy who's comfortable in his own skin, a guy who has earned the respect and trust of the pitchers, which is a really important quality for a catcher, a guy who just kind of puts his head down, ignores the negativity coming from the likes of me. If I heard somebody talking about me like I've talked about Joey Bart, not that I've been mean, but just pointing out your flaws left and right, that's tough. And it wasn't just me. And so for him to just kind of let it blow by him and to just stay focused and believe in himself I'm really impressed by that. But not only that, there's more. I think he's just turned a corner as a framer. He had a reputation of being a good defender, but I would argue in previous years he really wasn't. But so far this year, I've kind of seen enough to make the conclusion that Joey Bart has improved as a pitch framer and looks like one of the better pitch framers in the game right now. There's been tweets that he had one of the best pitch framing games since they've been tracked in one of his first games. And I honestly noticed it during the game. I was like, holy cow. The way that he's framing is just so impressive. And then I think there was another tweet that I saw that showed that, in fact, Joey Bart was leading the league in, you call it strike rate, but what it means is the strike rate on borderline pitches. We're talking a ball's width outside the zone and inside the zone all the way around the rectangle. Those pitches, what is the rate of called strikes? If the batter doesn't swing and it's a caught pitch, how often is it called a strike? And that's how we kind of measure framing. And he was leading the major leagues. Obviously a small sample, but doing as well as he possibly could in that regard. Plus, the other day, he made 2 excellent throws that were big spots, throwing runners out with the bigger bases and the pitch clock and all that kind of working against him. He's got a good arm. So just all of that combined, plus he's striking out less. And I know it's a small sample. It's only 27%. It was like 23, but he struck out a couple times last night. But then he hit a big double on a 2-strike pitch, and it set up the winning rally. And that was the hit during which he injured himself. And so it's just brutal timing. I'm not guaranteeing success for Joey Bart. When I do look at the numbers, I would point out things like, okay, he's got a .435 batting average on balls in play. That is not sustainable. He hasn't hit for much power. The walk rate is only 2.7%, which is low. The strikeout rate at 27% is better, but trending, like I said, it was like 22 and now it's 27. And so maybe one game where you go 0 for 4 with 4 Ks and it's back up to close to 40%. So I'm not promising anything. By the way, the contact rate is also much improved. So like on swings, he's making contact this year so far on 73% of swings, whereas last year, 64%. The year before that, he had 6 plate appearances, so I'm going to ignore that. But the year before that, 67%. So he's been around 65%. This year, 73%. So improvement. And it's just really unfortunate timing for him to get hurt. Not just for him personally, but I think mostly I feel for him personally to be finally feeling like maybe he's figuring it out and taking command of that role. But then also for the Giants, like what does it mean at the catcher position? Because Blake Sable, who's currently, I'm sure if Joey Bart is hurt enough, that's the thing. It's a groin. It's I think a right groin, and it's something that's been lingering for a few days. And so I don't know what that means. But if he just can't catch right now, they're going to have to make a move. You can't just have one catcher on your roster. And the one catcher being Blake Sable, who's not, I've been impressed enough. The catcher's interference stuff has been a problem, but otherwise Blake Sable, I trust him more at catcher than I do in the outfield, honestly, after seeing what we've seen from him this year. Got to clean up the catcher's interference, though. But if Bart even is down for 3-4 days, they have to make a move to have a second catcher on the roster. So what is it that they do? And to me, the obvious answer is Gary Sánchez, because Gary Sánchez, major league track record, former borderline star player, has fallen off, but improved defensively by a lot of different metrics in his time in Minnesota last year. Major league veteran, right? You somewhat know what you're going to get. It's not like thrust Patrick Bailey into the major leagues where you just don't know and he might just completely not be able to yet hit major league pitching. So they've got a decision to make, but particularly with the fact that Gary Sánchez has an opt-out of his deal next Monday. I believe it is next Monday, the 1st of May. Whatever it is, it's coming up soon. We're 25th of April now. That if he's not in the major leagues by then, he can just say peace and leave. And so the fact that Bart gets injured, it's just, to me, the obvious move, even though the numbers in AAA haven't been great, is to go to Gary Sánchez. And Roger Munter on Twitter, just throwing him a huge shout out for this, did some digging, and I hadn't done any of this digging, pointed out that Gary Sánchez's max exit velocity in AAA was huge. It was 114, 116. So when he's hit the ball hard, he's hit it extremely hard. And his 90th percentile exit velocity is also really hard. But the average exit velocity is low. I care less, honestly. I think average exit velocity is actually not that important. It's more about the 90th percentile, maybe 80th percentile exit velocity. If you're crushing the ball a lot, but then when you're not hitting it hard, you're hitting it poorly, that's all right. Because if you're not hitting the ball hard, whether it's hit poorly or just hit mediumly, it's probably an out anyway. And so those are encouraging signs. He's also had a really good walk rate. It's based on memory, I'm probably a little bit off here, but about 16%. But overall, the numbers don't look great. But like I said, track record, those EV numbers, exit velocity that Roger pointed out, and the walk rate, I think he's the guy. But you'd have to make a corresponding 40-man move, but you would anyway, no matter who you add, because they don't have any other catchers on the 40-man roster. So that's the status there. Coming up in just a minute, we'll turn our attention to the other injury updates that are good news. We've got Haniger back, Slater back, Ruff goes on the IL. What does it all mean? How did it all translate last night? And all of that in just a minute. But before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by So Rare. Our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next-level competitions and rewards. So Rare recently partnered with MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez. Head to sorare.com/lockedon, that's spelled SORARE.com, to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. All right, as promised, Mitch Haniger, Austin Slater back in the San Francisco Giants lineup. It's a big deal, especially considering their struggles against left-handed pitching. They immediately face a left-handed pitcher, squandered some early opportunities, bases loaded, one out, happened to be a lefty up in Conforto, which is, I don't want to say not ideal. You're going to have at least one lefty in there against a left-handed pitcher. Conforto, he's just struggling right now. He's hit some big homers this year, but overall, he hasn't quite gotten it going on a consistent basis. Thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we're going to be talking about, can the Giants win their fourth game in a row? This is a 4-game series, so winning the first 2 would put them in a great position to at least win 3 out of 4. The Giants play the Cardinals tonight at 6:45 Pacific. It's a big game. The Giants are using an opener for the first time all year in John Brebbia, probably followed by Jacob Junis. They're going to be facing a righty, so the lineup's going to look different. But hey, you'll see that Mitch Haniger is not a platoon player. Assuming they don't just want to give him a rest day, he should be in there. And so there's another everyday player, not a platoon player, to get excited about. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So, the roster moves. Mitch Haniger added, inserted straight into the lineup. Batting, what was he? Batting third, I believe. And Austin Slater reinstated from the injured list as well, and he DH'd and hit first. So that is kind of the thing. And I still see on Twitter all the time people questioning the lineups. I suppose those people are probably not listening to this podcast. But when the Giants are facing a lefty versus when the Giants are facing a righty, the lineups are going to look drastically different. That's just the case. Like someone was telling me, Estrada just needs to hit leadoff every day. The fact is, against a lefty, with Slater back, I guess maybe not, but he was leading off against lefties. And if it was a righty on the mound, he's a little bit lower in the lineup. And the same with the likes of Yastrzemski and Conforto. When there's a righty on the mound, they're up higher. When there's a lefty on the mound, they're lowered a little bit. And so lineup construction is probably, to me, the most overrated thing in the game. Like one of the most overrated elements of the game. And I know the players and people will tell you like just consistent lineup, blah, blah, blah. I get it. But at the same time, the dudes in the lineup are the dudes in the lineup. It's a modern age. Other teams do this. It's not just the Giants. Some teams have their set lineups, but just don't stress too much about the lineup order. And so, I mean, Slater leading off, taking over from Estrada. Well, what did he do? He had 2 hits. He almost had a third that would have driven in a run. Estrada, right after I talked him up in a huge way yesterday as a core piece for the Giants, had one of his worst offensive games, although continued to do a nice job defensively at short, where Brandon Crawford, it appears, is starting to be more of a platoon player, which I think is justified at this point, given his at-bat quality against left-handed pitching, although that 3-run homer he hit the other day was against a lefty, so it is still early. But Crawford has been arguably their worst position player, certainly their worst regular. And the fact that Estrada has played a good, solid shortstop, and it allows you to have VR at second and J.D. Davis at third and Wilmer Flores in the lineup, I don't see a problem with it. But so having Haniger back, having Slater back, great. And like I said, Haniger, everyday player. If assuming his health is good, he's going to be out there all the time. And so I look forward to that a lot. He's got power. He just kind of does everything well. He did kind of make a weird mistake in the outfield where he was just tracking a ball and then suddenly backed off. I think he thought Yastrzemski was going to catch it, but I chalked that up to it's his first time. I'm sure he's played here before, but probably been a while. First time in the outfield in left at this ballpark, and first time playing with Yastrzemski, first game of the year. So, I don't think that's a sign that he's going to be a bad defender. It was just a weird play. Thankfully, it didn't end up costing them. J.D. Davis, by the way, made another remarkable defensive play, a couple really, and then hit a 3-run homer also. And so he deserves, I should be talking about him more. The way he's playing at an all-star level right now. That trade is just a heist. All they gave up was Darren Ruff, and they got J.D. Davis, who's under club control this year and next year, plus 3 prospects for Darren Ruff, and now Darren Ruff is back with the Giants, and the Mets are paying him the majority of his salary. So it's crazy. It was a heist. But anyway, Darren Ruff, in a corresponding move, goes on the 10-day injured list with right wrist inflammation. And so my point, I said, it's 2 steps forward with Haniger and Slater, 1 step back with Ruff going on the IL. And I got several comments saying, come on, Darren Ruff, nobody cares about Darren Ruff. He stinks. Losing him is not even a minor inconvenience. Well, I beg to differ, because not by average home runs on RBIs, but by OPS, which is just simply on base plus slugging, weighted runs created plus, more advanced metrics that aren't that complicated, but I can't spend 20 minutes right now explaining it. But average home runs RBI, teams do not evaluate players with those numbers whatsoever anymore. They evaluate the players with the types of numbers I'm talking about. And Darren Ruff has been one of the best hitters by the advanced metrics, which aren't that advanced. It's simply when you're looking at stuff like RBIs, there's so much context that is dependent on an RBI. Playing time, having guys on base. The fact that I'm talking about he's about against lefties, there are fewer lefties, so he's not playing as much. If you're on the short side of the platoon, you don't get as nearly as many opportunities. And so those numbers are flawed for so many reasons. You're ignoring on base percentage, blah, blah, blah. But by the advanced metrics, Ruff has been one of the best hitters in baseball against left-handed pitching since he returned from Korea and joined the Giants in 2020. Plain and simple. He's had the same types of results against lefties as Mookie Betts over that span. No joke. No exaggeration. And so, yes, it's one player. And like I said, you gain 2 good righties in Haniger and Slater. But for a team that struggled so much to hit left-handed pitching, it is a little bit unfortunate to simultaneously lose Darren Ruff. And the consequence was that Mike Yastrzemski was in the lineup. And so it simply would be instead Slater would be in center instead of DHing, and Ruff would be DHing instead of Yastrzemski being in center. So you get what I'm saying? It would be Ruff in for Yastrzemski. You get what I'm saying, hopefully. And it's just, Yaz is just another lefty against a lefty. So I think there's no doubt you're better off with Ruff versus Yastrzemski when there's a lefty on the mound. Now, as soon as a righty comes in relief, there's where you go to Jock Peterson. And so when everything is going right, Ruff, I don't know if he's going to stick on this roster for the whole season, but he can be. We've seen it in 2021, like the way that they used him led to fantastic results, and they could do the same. And they didn't even have the DH, and now they do. So it's an even better fit for him. So anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, you're going to be hearing about, can the Giants win their 4th in a row using an opener? They don't want to expose lefty Sean Manaea against a heavily right-handed team. So the plan is for Brebbia to start and for Jacob Junis to pitch in long relief. And we'll be breaking it down tomorrow, and the everydayers will hear that. The Giants play the Cardinals tonight at 6:45 Pacific. Catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with the SiriusXM app, or with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot, so thank you in advance, and thank you so much to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Giants are winning some games, and I hope they can keep it up. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.